I would now like to invite our new Chancellor to the lectern to make her inaugural speech.
Thank you very much. No going back now. I'm shameless. They offered me a gold medal, and I don't know what I would have said if they said it was a silver one. But thank you. This is I haven't seen that video before. I hadn't heard what Shami was going to say. It's quite an overwhelming moment, if I'm honest. It's an honour I'd never, ever in my wildest dreams expected to be given. It's still sinking in, if I'm honest. I've had quite a lot of ties with Oxford Brookes University over the years, and I have never failed to be impressed by just what a warm, welcoming institution it is. Both staff and students alike make this place feel very, very special, and it is a genuine privilege to be able to serve you for the next 7 years or the next 150 years, as was suggested. It's going to sound a bit like a love-in, all the speeches this afternoon, but one of the big things for me was looking at my predecessors who'd gone before me. I'd never met John until today, but obviously he's well known and renowned even by the people who haven't met him. He comes into my living room every evening anyway. He just doesn't know that. And has educated and inspired me over the years through the power of television. Helena has more of an influence than she probably knows in my career. I went to study law at Edinburgh University. I didn't know what I definitely wanted to be when I grew up, and a lot of people say I still don't. But I was really attracted by the law, and I was attracted by the law in the big scheme of things, the big principles that law stands for, about truth and justice, and righting wrongs and equality. And I wanted to go and study something that had those big issues. I also watched a lot of LA Law, if I'm honest, and still watch a lot of those amazing courtroom dramas. And I wanted to be one of those people who stood up in court and made great speeches and made a difference in the world. And then I went to study the actual practicalities of the degree, and it wasn't quite as glamorous when I sat in my tax lectures. And I was told, look, it's not like it is on television. And then Helena Kennedy wrote a book called Eve Was Framed, and she came to Edinburgh University to speak about it. And she, as she is to this day, stood up, and she was this incredible, passionate, spirited, inspiring figure who spoke with conviction and challenged preconceptions. And I just thought, this is true. People like this do exist in real life. And it was everything I needed to hear about law, and it was wonderful. And you were a huge influence. And then I started rowing, and I don't know where it went wrong. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But to ever think I'd be in the same room, never mind following the footsteps of Helena, it's a big, big deal. And it was through I kept studying law. In fact, I've still got the book. Sorry, I was just going back. Helena, I obviously bought the book, and in the front of it, she wrote, "Dear Catherine, the law needs good women. Good luck." Which is great, which I still believe in, and you are the inspiration for that, and I'd sit in a boat. But I kept studying law through my rowing career as well. I went on to do my master's and my PhD, and it was through my PhD that I met Shami. Well, I almost met Shami. I was studying, my PhD subject was on whole life sentencing, and it was encompassing the issue of when people do the biggest crimes against humanity and against society, can there be any room for forgiveness, and should there be any room for rehabilitation and consideration of offenders, and should we take away hope from any individuals, irrelevant of what they've done? And I tried to speak to Shami about it, because I thought, of all people in the country, there's someone who speaks her mind. She's one of the most dangerous people in the country, as we know, and in her absolutely inspiring in her own way as well, and speaks so strongly on those issues and has such great convictions on the issues of human rights. So I tried to contact her through various different manners and means, and I couldn't get through to her. I realised she's one of the busiest people on the planet, and was actually chatting to Jon Snow on the Channel 4 News anyway. So that's why I couldn't get through. And then I met her just after I finished my PhD, bizarrely at the National Portrait Gallery. We got introduced there at a function. And we got introduced by the then director, who then said, "Oh, Shami, you must meet Catherine. She's just finished this PhD on, it's got human rights, criminal law, everything you'd love." And she said, "You should have asked me. Why didn't you come and talk to me?" I said, I tried. And we struck up a friendship there and then, but it was something I never expected to do when I got the call from Shami about the Chancellorship. I thought she was phoning to talk about the Chancellorship that she was doing, not the one that was coming up, the mantle she was going to pass on. I suppose I was shocked, and I was very, very surprised initially. I probably did all the things that you shouldn't do. I thought about the reasons I couldn't do it. I thought I wasn't the right age for it. I wasn't the right experience. I'd just committed to go back to the Rio Olympics. It wasn't a great time for me. And I just thought, well, don't you have to be someone very political, or at least a member of the royal family, or someone? And she just gave me this very wise words instead: stop being a girl about this. And take it on, and it'll be a decision you will never, ever regret. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. So I'm going to talk to you in 7 years' time, whether or not you're right. I already had associations with Dr Brookes. As was said in the video, I've done some work with the Social Entrepreneur Awards. But I still felt, was I the right person? Ultimately, I guess from my point of view, I sit in a boat. I go backwards. I wear lycra. But I'd always felt welcomed here. And when I came and did the Dragon's Den Awards for the Social Entrepreneur Awards, I was one of the dragons. So now I'm a lycra-wearing dragon, and now I sound even more unlike a Chancellor. And the great thing when I did the Social Entrepreneur Awards was how strong the ethics and morals and principles and values of this university hold true. They're not just a list in a handbook. They're not just on the wall. They are lived and breathed by the staff and the students at this university. And there really is a drive to make sure that it's not just a degree students leave with, but they make a difference in the world, in the wider world, in the local community. They make a difference in a bigger scale. And I think growing up, my parents were both teachers, and they drummed into me from day one the value of education and the importance of knowledge, and what a privilege having an understanding and a learning and having free thought. All those things were so important, so valued, and things we can take for granted too easily. And I think in this university it's never taken for granted, and it's always tried to be shared and expanded. And like Shami said, more and more students hopefully experience that as well. So there was an element of, is there any reason why I should say no? It's a fantastic institution. It's growing and developing all the time. It's leading its fields in so many ways. I'm slightly biased, but I think it's added that it's got a fantastic rowing club. I think that raises the level of any institution, quite frankly. But these are students here have completed the Olympics and the Paralympics, and that does add something special. And the people have always been so warm, and the only reason I could think possibly to say no is probably because of those three people sitting over there. They have set such a high standard for the Chancellor role. They are three completely inspiring individuals in their own right, and it's hard for anyone, even I've got very big feet, but it's very hard to fill any of their footsteps. And in all honesty, right now, I don't know if I definitely can. I've got 7 years to find out, but I guess one thing I've learned over my career and over my life so far is that there are absolutely no guarantees in life, and there are no certainties. And in a way, that's what makes this world so beautiful and so special. The fact that the status quo will always be and should always be challenged, that things will change, that comfort zones are not designed to be a destination. Comfort zones should be temporary, and you need to get out of it. And I think it's an interesting time for the world right now. There are so many challenges, and they're very fierce, and there are very many. You can just look at the attack that happened yesterday in Tunisia, Copenhagen last week, Paris the month before. There are issues happening all the time. We've got Ebola going on in Africa, the Middle East. There are so many issues the whole time that it's very easy to get scared and the world feel an insecure, unsure, unclear place. And yet, this is the same world. Well, for example, in our country just last week, we raised £1 billion over the last 30 years for comet relief to do good around the world. And people on this planet sent a tiny little satellite, 6 billion kilometres to a comet to find out if they could find the origins of water and possibly life. And they found the Higgs boson particle, which lasts for apparently a trillionth of a second. I can't even get my head around that. because human nature and human spirit will always challenge and always test and always want to find and discover and learn more. And I think we have to be optimistic about the place we live in and what the future holds. And I'll finish by saying one little story it's an anniversary actually, 100 years ago, of someone who had to be very optimistic in the face of overwhelming odds. And that was in 1915, Ernest Shackleton, the big polar explorer. He didn't just have a bad day, he had a bad 2 years. He set out for his final mission to try and conquer Antarctica on his ship, the Endurance. And a few months in, the ship got lodged in ice and stayed there for 9 or 10 months while they waited for the ice to melt. The ice didn't melt, instead the ice crushed the ship. The 27 members of his team and himself had to get off the ship, get into little lifeboats, spent ages trying to get to a little island, found the island uninhabited, then had to patch everything up after a few months, went to another island, ended up on the wrong side of the island, they had to cross mountains to get to any inhabitation, and then Ernest Shackleton turned around and went back to get the rest of the people from his crew. All 28 survived after 2 years of living on ice and eating penguins, apparently. Not the chocolate biscuits, by the way. And one of the big things he has studied for to this day is his leadership skills. Despite his mission being seen as a failed mission, because he never made it to Antarctica, everyone survived, and he's seen as a real leader in how he did things, because he always held on to optimism, and his definition was optimism is moral courage. Optimism is moral courage. And I urge all of you to be optimistic and to be morally courageous. You have to believe that you do make a difference and you will make a difference, and the difference you make is important. It's testing times for everyone, but it's also very, very exciting times ahead for each and every one of us. And all I can say for students and for staff and everyone alike, take part, have an opinion, then challenge your own opinion. Think, be a maker, be a doer, be a creator, be whatever it is, but do something. Don't just sit back and criticise, because that is far too easy and beneath each and every one of you here. There is so much to do out there in the world. Take a little part and do it. I wasn't sure about this role. I have grabbed it hopefully with both hands. If I can in any way live up to any of those three amazing people sitting over there, I've done a good job, and I look forward to the next 7 years or 150 years of seeing what difference I can make, and I hope that between us we can all make a little bit of history. Thank you.